Occupy is predominantly a youth movement calling attention to the unprecedented wealth inequalities that exist in our country and throughout the world. Indeed, in the United States right now, the wealthiest 1% of the country owns 35% of the nation's wealth. While the participants in Occupy movement are members of a wide variety of groups, they all identify as part of the 99% of people who do not have access to the country's wealth. The labor movement in the United States has been one of the strongest allies to the Occupy movement. Other participants in the Occupy movement include peace activist groups, veterans, elected officials, immigrant rights groups, and of course the Young Communist League. The Young Communist League, even though we are in a rebuilding phase, has participated in Occupy in every city where we exist, and has even initiated the Occupy chapters in some cities. Young Communist League members and Communist Party leaders in the United States have been arrested in Chicago on 2 separate occasions during police raids on the Occupy movement. Also, the network of new student labor alliances in the country have achieved a new level of coordination and power. I had the privilege of attending the AFL-CIO's Next Up conference in September, where 800 young workers and leaders gathered to plot the future of the union movement in the United States. Student leaders who attended the conference reported winning many victories on university campuses. For example, under the direction of United Students Against Sweatshops, students at over 15 universities nationwide have built a successful campaign to end their university's contracts with the food service provider Sodexo because of Sodexo's violations of workers' rights in the United States and abroad. The labor movement in general has made dramatic investments in young people over the last period of time. Young people are also leading the fight for job creation. The Young Communist League has been collecting signatures nationwide in support of President Obama's American Jobs Act and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky's Emergency Jobs to Restore the American Dream Act. If passed, these bills would create over 4.2 million new jobs in the United States. Last week, in the city where I live, the Young Communist League and other youth led a march of 200 people in support of jobs for youth and jobs for all. I will highlight why the fight for jobs is so important. Right now, we have 25 million people who are unemployed and looking for work in the United States. This is the worst economy that we have had since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The youth employment rate has dropped to 48.8%, which is the lowest on record since the Bureau of Labor Statistics began tracking this number in 1948. As racism remains a major factor in access to education and employment in U.S. society, for African American and Latino youth, the employment rate is much lower. Students who take out loans to go to college are graduating with an average debt of over $25,000 US. College graduates have an unemployment rate of 9.1%. Youth unemployment has also exacerbated violence amongst youth in our urban communities. In my small city of New Haven, Connecticut, 29 people, mostly young men of color, have been killed this year, the most recent of them being only 13 years old. In Chicago, in one May weekend alone, 6 people were killed and 21 were injured by gun violence. That same weekend, 1,000 youth were part of a gang-related fight in Carson Beach in South Boston. In general, the Center for Disease Control concludes that youth violence is the second leading cause of death for young people in the United States. As I mentioned earlier, the Young Communist League is in a period of rebuilding in the United States and has been for the last year and a half. We are making good progress. We have held 5 YCL schools in the last year in Los Angeles, Connecticut, Chicago, Florida, and Texas. At the schools, we taught classes about Marx and Lenin, the labor movement, ending racism, and other topics. Also, hundreds of youth are joining the Young Communist League every month online. Because youth are so disillusioned with capitalism in the United States right now, this moment is a huge opportunity for building solidarity with and awareness of countries where socialism and communism exist as the dominant system. This includes Cuba and the growing anti-imperialist governments in Latin America. This past weekend, the Communist Party and the Young Communist League held a joint meeting on building solidarity with Cuba and the Cuban Five. Finally, I will speak briefly about the 2012 elections in the United States. The election of Obama in 2008 was a tremendous victory for the people of the United States and indeed for people people all over the world. The election of our first African American president has been a huge blow to the entrenched racism in our country. Young people are the reason that Obama won the presidency, as he earned 66% of the youth vote. Obama continues to push policies that benefit working class people in the United States, and Republicans continually block these policies to make Obama look ineffective. Youth in the United States also have major disappointments with the Obama administration that cannot be ignored. These include the large number of people who have been deported during his presidency due to immigration issues, which exceeds the number deported during Bush's presidency. These also include his foreign policy towards Libya, Cuba, and Afghanistan, and Iraq, and other regions where he has continued aggressive imperialist policies. We in the Young Communist League USA look forward to working with all of you to push the U.S. government to reach a cooperative rather than imperialist approach to foreign policy around the world. That said, the fight for jobs and real solutions must include re-electing Obama in 2012. It is the role of the YCL to emphasize this wherever we go and to try to push youth in the Occupy movement and elsewhere who do not want to work with any politicians to understand that being absent from the political process is only allowing the ultra-right wing to build power. Thank you so much. I don't want to go over time, but this is essentially so that we continue to build a movement with all of you throughout the world. And thank you very much, comrades, for having me today. I'm honored to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, comrades. Торговля людьми, организованная преступность во всех структурах, властных структурах, наркомания. Из-за наркотиков в России только умирает около 100 тысяч молодых людей. Это 3 миллиона детей в школу не пошли. То, о чем мы не слышали даже при социализме. Конечно, есть страны, где положение еще хуже. Мы солидаризуемся с народами Палестины, Сербии, Ливии, Ирана и Ирака. Они живут.
وإن كنا بعيدين عن ما يسمى المدينة العربية بسبب الاحتلال الأمريكي والقواعد العسكرية الموجودة في منطقتنا وتحديدا في الكويت، فإن هذا لا يعفينا من مسؤوليتنا الاتفاقية للتضامن مع الشعوب وحركات المنطقة الطامحة للتغيير وحقوق الإنسان والتحرر. وأننا كمنظمة نعتقد بأن المنطقة العربية تتعرض لاختطاف من خلال تدخل الناتو ومن خلال القرارات الدولية بضرب الشعوب بضرب المنطقة والأعمال العسكرية بدعوى دعم الشعوب في مطالبها. ويجب أن نؤكد على رفض الاحتلال الأمريكي لمنطقة الخليج على اعتبارها قاعدة متقدمة قواعد متقدمة لضرب الحركة في شمال أفريقيا والشرق الأوسط. وأننا نؤكد على دعمنا للشعب البحريني في حركة 14 فبراير من أجل التغيير واختيار الحكم الذي يريده الشعب. ونرفض الاحتلال السعودي للبحرين الهادف لقمع هذا الحراك الشعبي. ونطالب بالإفراج عن الناشطين والمعتقلين في السجون السعودية، ونخص بالذكر أخيرا المناضل إبراهيم شريف. ولا ننسى أثناء ذلك دعم الشعب السعودي في حراكه ضد النظام الملكي الديني من أجل الإصلاحات السياسية والديمقراطية وحقوق الإنسان. ونطالب بالإفراج